In this video, we strive to remain spoiler-free, discussing only story and plot elements from the books relevant to what has occurred already on the show. When necessary, a spoiler warning with a countdown will be given.
Hi, I'm Max.
And I'm the Geeky Hippie. Welcome back to WoT the Adaptation, that YouTube channel that reviews adaptations from one format to another form. This week, we continue on with The Expanse, but we have a new guest. We have Over's Ears with us. Everybody, meet Over's Ears. Mitch, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Glad to have you on. Been looking forward to this for a while. You tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
I found this primarily because I'm part of the Wheel of Time community. Have been a long time reader of that particular series. The Expanse, I've read through the book once, or the series once, and I'm currently on my first reread at this point.
Yeah, glad to have you on, man. It's been a while. I always enjoy hanging out with you in live stream chats. Some great people to meet there, especially in the WoT community.
Oh yeah.
Max, what can you tell us about this episode?
Oh, this is episode 10, Cascade. Holden leads his crew through Ganymede, while Bobby looks for the ocean and Amisar looks for Bobby. It was directed by Mikhail Salomon, written by Mark Fergus. Both of these, I believe, were the same director and writer of last episode.
I think so. They feel a lot alike, these two episodes. What'd you guys think of this one?
Well, I felt it's a setup episode as much as anything else. As far as any real action goes, there's a limited amount, very limited. One of my favorite bits, though, and but it is definitely a setup for what's coming very shortly.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yes,
I'd agree.
I enjoy the episode. I mean, it's not an episode that I love, but I've come to really enjoy certain scenes, just for how beautifully done they were. And there's even one shot in particular that I really like, just the framing of. But it is a setup episode because not a lot happens on its own. Just a couple of little things. And for the people involved, some of those things are pretty big, but it's pretty, So Max, you want to start us off?
Yeah. Were there any changes from the source material in this episode, and how did they affect how you enjoyed the show?
We lost Wendell and the Pinkwater crew. I kind of enjoyed Wendell and the Pinkwater crew, especially when and I think the quote is Holden points at all the Pinkwater crew that wasn't Wendell. And that's actually what the book says, in the sentence, that weren't Wendell. And I'm just like, just the way they were, I don't know, they had fun writing those guys, I think. Because some of the comedy in this part of the book comes from the interplay with the Pinkwater crew.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, can I have a grenade like her? No, Paula's cuter than you. Almost getting to throw some wisecracks.
Love Amos's wisecracks in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing too is between the book and the series at this point, everything is completely out of sync. That which happens earlier in the books happens later here, and vice versa. And I as you've covered, the entire interface or the meetup between Prax and the Roci crew is completely different.
Yeah.
So
they're taking a different route.
Yeah, they did. Though for what we get on Ganymede, it's not that far off from most of the chapters that had to do with that were related.
No. It's fairly there's the inevitable changes. There are a lot of differences, and sometimes they even do reversals. Like where it's like it's going this way in the book, but on the show it goes in an entirely different direction. but somehow they still get to the same. When you look at the next couple of episodes and how it finishes out, it doesn't even finish Caliban's War, does it? We don't even get to
No.
the end of Caliban's War with this book.
No, I think
So,
it's pretty much the first quarter of the book.
yeah, because Caliban's War goes in. Season 3 also has a lot of book 3 in it, so I know that. But yeah, it's out of sync is the right way to put it. They don't have things happening when they should, or their equivalents, and things are happening. Where in the books they're lined up this way, they're lined up here with something else entirely. With different chapters. So you're having, if you're wanting to listen to listen or read those chapters, you have to keep going back and forth throughout the episode.
Am I the only one that feels like the non-action parts in Ganymede, they're spending a lot more time in the show than they did in the book? Like the book, it kind of like they felt like they really went through the fast part of the kind of exploring this stuff before stuff actually hits the fan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's an artifact of getting rid of the Pinkwater crew. And that whole, the whole way they started off, all tooled up and everything, as they started with Naomi on Overwatch.
Yeah. And you have to remember too in the books that they are on the Somnambulist rather than the Roci, so they've got room to take the Pinkwater crew on, or make the offer at least. So that does make a big difference as far as whether you could utilize a group such as the Pinkwater in the show.
Hey, what next?
I was gonna say, for me, I didn't really think there were, change wise for this episode. Nothing really struck me. Really, I didn't remember the Pinkwater crew at all. When reading the book, it's just one of those things. Like, it just kind of made a skim past it or something, but I barely remembered it. But just this section of the book to the show, it's like there's so much lacking in common that I can't really say if they changed it enough to even notice. Aside that, it's out of order.
Right.
One of the I was referring to reversals. One, for instance, is on the show or in the book, Ehrenreich assigns the Venus, what's going on Venus, to Christian to watch, to keep her eye on it. Says keep, you deal with it. In the show, Ehrenreich entirely does not want her anywhere near Venus and talks her out of getting in the loop on Venus.
Speaking of him, is it just me or did they make his story a little bit more sympathetic than in the books?
They've been doing that for a couple of weeks now.
He's now playing the he's playing the I didn't want anything to do with it card now.
And also in the show versus the books, it's how he has been involved with Mao is so much more apparent. They introduced that. I mean, for goodness sakes, everyone's got the body cam video of the monster, except our heroes at this point in time. Whereas, in the books, whereas in the series, nobody's seen it yet except for Bobby.
The only person alive that's seen it, and that's one of the changes. That change frustrates me at times. I try to understand why they went in that. That's another example of a reversal, that they've done with adapting the screen, and I haven't quite figured out why, they went that way. Except just it had so many ripple effects that shrunk it down, everything down. I think is probably the only thing I can think of. They made it less complex, simple complex maybe.
Yeah, and also I think for the sake of the tension, having certain characters in the dark in the show versus what they know in the books, I think makes for a more effective narrative, really.
So the next question is, how well did the show adapt the scenery, costumes, props, music, or even the CGI effects?
I'll let you gents go first if you had anything.
Yeah, there really wasn't anything spectacularly different in this show regarding costumes. The sets have already been established, so I don't think we've seen anything different there. I don't remember if in this episode we had an instance where Avasarala dims her windows, which I think is an incredibly beautiful effect. And I can't wait to get that here in my house. But there was nothing that stood out in my mind.
It was, I mean, visually it was all incredible, except there was something, and this is probably the dumbest, most inane thing I'm going to complain about the entire night. But when Roma was searching on his computer, trying to find a match with May, it was scanning against other mugshots, not shots from surveillance cameras in the hallways and corridors and plazas of Ganymede Station. He's not searching. They consciously put up artwork that's putting that in there. Is they specifically chose those pictures? Why they just pick pictures that they had either stock photos or pictures of family and friends or themselves? I don't know what it was, but it didn't make sense looking at it. And I know it's a stupid thing to complain about, but it kind of stuck out to me every time I watched that scene.
I'd be curious, since they scrolled through those pictures so quickly, if they threw in any ringers, like a celebrity or something like that, just to see if anyone's paying attention.
For me, when they did the ocean scene, for instance, I was expecting a lot more like, say, dead fish and washed up tires on this ocean front. Other than that, like the wall towards the edge of the sand and the sewer pipe, storm sewer, it looked very cheap to me, very budget friendly. Because clearly the city behind that wall was CG. That it was very obvious.
So that's the shot that I really liked, with Bobby sitting on the sand, Avasarala standing next to her, and Kotyar Ghazi over on the side. Just the composition with the wall going down, just I don't know. I like the shot.
This also goes into another part, is their overuse of like that blue light filter they use throughout the show. Earth shouldn't have that same look as the space stations should have.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something science fiction shows do a lot of.
It's kind of like when you're watching a movie and everything has like that yellow grain filter throughout. They need to learn to take the filter off on certain scenes.
Yeah.
Not everything needs to be that same filter color through. It's kind of like HBO has their dark filter, as in every show. Game of Thrones, we're looking at you. But like I said, for me, like, you should have specific ones for you're on Mars. It should have a specific filter. If you're on Earth, it's specific. If you're in a station, a specific one. Even the ship should have a specific filter for where they're from, whether they're Belters or Earthers or Mars.
That's a good point.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And we're still in the sci-fi seasons of the show. At this point, they were still in sci-fi at this point, and that was a pretty sci-fi move of them. They probably had the one camera for the whole show.
That could be. Yeah, there's one scene that kind of I thought was weird was when Prax went behind the wall of plants.
Oh, I kind of like that scene.
But he's playing with the same tubes all the time while he's explaining this, and he's not doing anything. He's not rerouting or anything. But he just keeps looking at, he's looking close up at things, and that kind. I mean, yes, we had to have something happen during that narrative, but I thought that was a little. Maybe
all that looking was seeing exactly how fracked, the system is there. He was he was getting his first real close look at the local botanical samples.
I was going to segue me into a little bit was the actual plants they had. Since I do garden, I don't really recognize a lot of what they were having for, edible plants. I recognize what looked like wheat.
The one he named, I looked it up and I could not find it, but I found other plants that have similar names, but I could not find, I can't remember the first word in it, but patatas was the second word in its scientific name. The one Prax is like, did you notice the such and such patatas out there? And Amos is like, I'm sure I didn't.
But like before the wall scene, they were walking, he saw the various plants and stuff, and it looked like wheat, grass type stuff going on, which is okay, they're doing wheat, whatever. But then it looked like there was some other taller one. I had no idea what that was. It almost looked like some kind of flower. Probably not giving a potato plant, but just got tall.
Yeah, I don't know what they use. They might have just used stuff that was edible, not even real plants, might have just been, made out of sugar.
Or they just sent an intern to the local Home Depot to pick up whatever looked like green.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes you got to go on the cheap with a show when you can get something from off the shelf. When you can get away with something off the shelf, you get away with something off the shelf instead of fabricating it yourself or contracting its fabrication.
Yeah.
So.
Or you go to Michael's and just buy a bunch of vines and rip them apart and put them up there.
Pretty much.
Not if we can get those windows. Those windows, man. We talked about it last week. And I'm like, I want those windows. I wouldn't be surprised if we've got something very close to that. It seems to me like we do have I've seen something about windows like that, but I don't know. Those windows are just too awesome.
We're ready for our next question.
Or
you got more?
One thing I liked on the production side is when Bobby was walking through the homeless enclave there near the UN. You could see the pots and pans all had electronic displays on them. One pot had a recipe on it. Another one boiling water for coffee or something was rising up to 92 degrees Celsius. You could see its temperature, and stuff was. And I just thought that's kind of neat, just these little bits of technology they threw in. Just I don't know. I thought that was a neat little touch that they totally didn't have to do.
Yeah, and for them at that, several hundred years in the future, that's going to be par for the course. I mean, our pots and pans would look archaic.
It's like if you go in our reality, for instance, you'll have people that are mad that 30 years ago you could have an apartment that didn't have, say, a air conditioner, and like now that's common. And now they're mad that you got an electric stove or you got a refrigerator and a microwave. So clearly you're not, poor because you have this technology. You have a cell phone, so you're not poor. So it's like this shows that you can still have this level of technology in the future because like it's that commonplace.
Right.
It may be so commonplace that you still don't have access to food. You don't have access to money. You can still have these things.
Right.
And the sad thing is we got to remember they've got the dole. Basically, they got basic on Earth, and there's still people living like that. And I'm just like that we'll talk about more later.
Okay. All right. So the next question is, how well written is the dialogue, and how did those actors deliver those lines? For me, one of my favorite parts of this is the scene where Nico is talking to Bobby, and he's talking about I can't remember what he was talking about offhand right now, but just what he was talking about with her, I thought they were pretty well written lines.
Yeah. Actually, I really like that scene. I was disappointed that
he was trying to get the osteo drug off of her.
Yeah,
he said to help with like the kids have to survive this summer when they gotta drink sewer water. And she's like, is that the truth? And he says, does it even matter?
Does it even matter if I tell you yes?
Mhm.
I had
Yeah,
two complaints about the. Go ahead, Mitch.
I was going to say that the other thing that in that conversation was when he was telling her how to walk, start to look down, then slowly, millimeter by millimeter, look up, and so on. And from the books, that was a guard at the UN mission when she had to get out for some air after exploding in the meeting.
The one who let her in the exit door.
Yeah, and he let her back out after giving her those exact same words. Yeah,
I like that scene in the book, and I'm okay with the way they changed it because I really, this is spoiler for later this episode, this show, but I really enjoyed Nico. Nico is one of my favorite, one of my highlights of the episode. I found something endearing in him, and just the way that scene played out was just, she needed that. And then how he just kind of like vanishes in the thin air like he wasn't there, But
that was a nice touch.
I had two bits of dialogue that I was disappointed. Comeback responses to accusations people made or things somebody said, and the person never responded with the way they should have responded. And it just, and like when Basha freaks out, it starts freaking out and beating up Prax, calling him a coward for just leaving. Prax should have been like, hey, I was unconscious when I was put on that ship. I had no control over that. Don't go yelling at me and call me a coward. I got back here as soon as I was able after I woke up.
Yeah.
And then Bobby, when, Captain Martins is giving her crap about, like there's really going to be a person standing on the surface of Ganymede without a vac suit, she should have said, yeah, an arrow shouldn't be moving on its own volition, should it? Weird shit's happening, Captain.
That might be within Bobby's character not to say that, just because her character wasn't supposed to be that smart.
She's
yeah.
She's not dumb, that's for sure. She's pretty smart, I think. And definitely think she's smart from reading the books.
I'd say smart for a Marine.
Wow.
Oh,
wow.
hey.
I'm sorry. Ooh, man.
I have family that's Marine.
Did
I'm a Navy guy, so yeah, I've got Marine friends. I like my Marines. Oh, wow. That was all you, man. All you.
Wow. Well, I had a few quotes here, and one was already brought up, when that was Prax asking Amos, how many people have you killed? Which is slightly different from the question asked in the books, but fundamentally the same. The other one was Captain Martins, when he's talking to Bobby, and I think this is right after her, when they got back into her room after she testified, and he's starting to get a little ticked with her, and he comes out with this great line: truth and fact aren't the same thing. And I thought, oh, lovely doublespeak that is.
Right. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking about it. Mars, you see it more down the line when we actually spend some time on Mars. Mars is a freaking police state. Big time. And I never really, it never really connected until just recently that, I mean, Mars practically has Big Brother on the walls, and on the, concourse there. I don't know. Mars is kind of scary.
To put in perspective, though, they kind of have to be because of everything going on to keep it livable.
Yeah.
Everybody has to pull their weight. Nobody, you can't have any people who are sluggards.
Yeah.
And you can't afford even one terrorist attack. You can't one bad place bomb. You know.
See, the difference between Earth and Mars, though, is Mars actually has jobs to give people, or a military to put them into.
And there was one other thing that I had. Oh yeah, you were talking about what I don't have the exact words, but it's while Amos is eating chicken, and he's explaining all the horrible things that could possibly happen to May, and so on and so forth. He is actually subconsciously telling us who he himself, or where he himself came from.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's the first hint we get, other than, stupid things, like, bordellos and so on, or brothels.
Well,
but it's the first indication we get that something deeply bothersome happened in his past.
I think there was a hint back in season 1 when they first got to Tycho, and Alex and Amos were at a club, and a guy came over to hit on Amos. Amos said no, and then he's like, "Hey, can you tell me?" And Amos ends up telling Alex he grew up in a place like that. So I think that might be the very first hint. But yeah, there is definitely a dark past, a painful past for Amos.
And I think this is this is the first time that that really dark part, I think, has come out, and we learn more later, but this is the fact that he exposed himself so much, I thought, was odd.
Yeah.
So in the book, there was a segment where he was talking to Prax regarding the whole misinformation campaign against him and his ex-wife.
Yeah.
And he basically said something along those same lines regarding Prax and his kid, about what he may or may not have done with her.
This is much later in the book, right?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
I'm not sure if it was much later. It was before they went to Ganymede, I think. Or no, that was after Ganymede. Yeah, because everything's out of order. Yeah. Because they got Prax off of Ganymede. Yeah. But like later he'd said the same thing, like, if you had said yes to any of this stuff, I would have shot you in the head. But like the speech kind of reminded me of that speech he had in the book.
I remember that speech now.
So if we don't get that scene in the show, that's where they moved it to. Sorta. That's with the "I'll kill you for doing this," but this is the guy who may have been doing the same kind of stuff.
At the rate that I've been re-listening and rereading these books on the show, by the time we finish this show, I'm probably going to be as well versed in The Expanse as I am in The Wheel of Time. And I've been following that for 30 plus years. It's just because there's this constant. I literally, since Friday night, have watched this episode 6 times.
Oh,
that's more than usual. I usually only do it 3 or 4 times, but I had an extra night to kill. And yeah, because I didn't want to get into any other TV shows and get my mind off of The Expanse. I wanted to stick with The Expanse, so I just kept rewatching it, re-listening to it.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Are we ready for the next question, or you got more?
Yeah, I don't see any other quotes here that I wanted to bring up.
Okay. So what was the scene or sequence you most remembered, enjoyed, or hated?
Well, for me, that's easy. Throughout the series, we occasionally get what I call Amos eyes. And that's when intense eyes, it's like when Miller hit him and Amos just turns and you get those eyes. We get a little touch of that when he's beating up Romo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we do. It doesn't go all out, but we get a little bit of it there. But I thought the fact that that particular scene the fact that Holden didn't get in there and stop him.
Right.
That.
And so he went so far as to hold Naomi back from getting in
Yeah.
there and stopping it. Yeah. Holden has become that which he kicked Miller off of the ship for being.
Yep.
If Holden was put in front of Dresden right now, he'd have capped Dresden in the face just as quickly as Miller did.
I believe you're right. Yeah, Holden's a different person now.
Especially in the book. Especially in the book. They don't show the change as well, I don't think, on the show, as the book does it. But books are
It's because we're
always do
getting
that
the
kind of-
we're getting the pirate stuff now, so to speak.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Max, did you have a scene?
So pretty much everything Amos, obviously. The Nico scene, which I mentioned prior, and
Yes.
you did mention. I'm trying to remember her
So
name
I'm
here
not the only
quick.
one that likes Nico and Bobby scene. Good.
Naomi.
Oh, yeah.
This kind of actually goes back to also dialogue, mind you, is that scene with Naomi where she was talking about, every bad thing we do, it gets a little bit easier. Really enjoyed that scene.
Mhm.
Nico and Bobby is my number 2. My favorite scene is Alex drinking and singing and just playing around in 0G. I mean, I'm not really a fan of country music, but I can appreciate the really old classical country music like we got in that scene. And I like
Well, and the
bluegrass.
song was
Bluegrass is-
perfect. The song
Yeah.
was perfect too.
But
Loneliest
just-
Guy or
just
Hank
that whole
Williams.
choreography of everything, the empty cans floating around. I'm not too keen on the way they drink out of cans in 0G. I don't know how well that would work, but
Yeah.
maybe they talked to some astronauts and got some pointers. Who knows, for all I know. But it took me until like my 4th rewatch this weekend, and I'd seen it 2 or 3 times before this weekend, to figure out what he was doing with that gun. He was getting a distance measurement.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, 3.91 meters, I think it was, or 3.19 meters from down to there. And I could not until today. I was like, what's he doing? And I'm like, oh, I see what he's looking at. I really got to mention though, great scene with Aaron Wright confessing Davos Sarala. Just there was some class acting there, I think, and that's that scene. One of the scenes in this episode I really enjoyed the most is watching. Yeah, I've been enjoying watching Sean Doyle's work the last 5 or 6 episodes. He's just been really, really killing it with all this subtle little work on his face without saying a word. And I'm just like, man, that guy's good, and he just raised that scene to a whole new level for me.
He
Any other?
yeah, that scene, it doesn't seem to be natural though. Why would he confess right then? I found it to be odd that occurred when it did, the way it did.
See, I think his guilt has been building recently. His guilt's been building up over, and you've been seeing it more and more. And like last episode, he looked real guilty when Frank DeGraff was even mentioned. They did a cut shot over to him, and you see him looking all bad. I don't know. I think they've been building up to, his realization that the only way to put an end to this problem is for him to come clean to Avasarala and let her know everything that's actually going on. Things may change in an episode or 2, but I think at this point in time, I think he really is. He's remorseful, and I think, and he only one way out, and that's to confess. Otherwise, Mars gets what, the proto molecule soldier. He doesn't want that.
The actor
wants to stop it.
The actor had one other scene where he's able to get angry, and I thought that worked out really well when he, look, I want you to investigate every molecule of that suit. When he was able to get really angry, he does a great job of that.
Sean Doyle is good, and he's especially good at playing a dislikable character. Because he did it all season on, was it season 4 Star Trek Discovery, or was it season 4 or 5? He was on there. Very dislikable scientist, but they couldn't do without him, so it's like they had to keep him around, and it's like, yeah. I think he's one of the best things this show's got going for it right now. Along with, show Ray Agnew, of course. I mean, that scene wouldn't have been half of what it was. It would, can't put it all on Sean Doyle.
Okay. The next question is the best and or worst actor in this episode. For me, I'm gonna have to go with Milton Barnes as Nico. Just a random first time we saw the character in this episode, and I think he nailed it.
Yeah. He was, I've got a thing here saying props to the day players, first of all being Milton. But I'd also say Stephen Yaffe as Roma.
Yeah.
I mean, Roma wasn't likable, and that's exactly how he was supposed to be. But, this little guy with more confidence and arrogance than he has any right to have, and it's all because he's got what people want, and he played that so well.
I was just thinking he was a bad tomato.
Yeah. Well, I thought he was the best character, outside of the main characters in this episode too.
Roma or Nico?
Roma.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, and what a prize character to play. I mean, that was just beautiful.
That was fun. Bad guys are more fun to play. The little bit of acting I've done, but I've known actors, and they always like playing the bad guys.
Kind of like Mao.
For me, who?
The guy plays Mao.
Jules Pierre.
Pierre. Yeah.
Francois.
I'm thinking Mao. Yeah. I don't know why I'm thinking Mao, but yeah, Pierre. He always plays a bad guy in a lot of shows.
Byron Mann, who plays Admiral Wen on here. I looked him up and I went, no shit. For anybody out there who watched the series on CW Arrow, he was Lao Fei back on Lian Yu when Oliver was on the island. And it's so totally, absolutely a different character. I was like, he even looks completely different. The hair and makeup on Arrow was a lot different than what he's got here. But I was like, no kidding. Byron Mann's got a pretty decent pedigree with his acting. His CV is pretty impressive. I already mentioned Sean Doyle as being one of the best things in this episode. But I also got to give credit. Terry Chen as Prax Terry Chen is just so good. I warned last week he might be in my list of best actors every week he's on. And then Frankie Adams as Bobby, but not just Frankie Adams as Bobby, but Frankie Adams' stunt double, who I believe in this episode was Sarah Holdmoser. Forgive me if I pronounce that name right. It'll be on the screen. Wrong if I pronounced it wrong. But I believe that's who was their stunt double for this episode. So that's the one who did the fall down, and watching that, I cringed at every single impact because I know it hurt. And it's like, ouch. ouch. And like I said, I've watched it many times now, so it's like I've taken that fall a few times too many. But stunt performers don't get enough credit in the industry. They really should be a category at the Oscars, and they should be a category if they're not in the Emmys. Not just stunt performers, but stunt coordinators.
I believe I believe they do have those categories in the Oscars. It's just not in the big show that we see.
It should be. There is none for stunt.
I think
stunt
that came up.
And stunt coordinator, there's not.
I think that came up with like, what was it, Wheel of Time or something, where like they were in the running for stunt or something, but they never showed it, and there's a big hubbub that there were several things that they just didn't. They didn't even have in the show. Period. Like they were not recorded. Nothing. It was just like back room. Here's your reward. Walk away.
I think Golden Globes covers stunt performance and stunt coordinators, and actual best stunt, I think, should be a category too. There should be 3 categories for it. But I don't think anybody other than maybe there's one of the more larger awards that does have it. It might be the Emmys, but I think it's the Golden Globes.
They all run together for me.
Yeah, that's the problem for me. I do know though that the Oscars does not have a category for best stunt performers, or did not. They might have changed that in the last year or two.
Yeah, I have one other character. I don't know the actor's name, but the guy that plays Captain Martins. Peter
Outerbridge.
Yeah.
Yes. I was happy to see him. He's good.
Yeah, I thought he portrays the character well. It's a good character to be able to play as well, which is nice. But yeah, I really appreciate what he's doing on the screen.
Yeah, he's good. I was happy the first time I noticed him on here. I was like, oh, I know this guy. And I'm like, yeah, I looked his name up, like, okay, yeah, I've seen that name. You know, and I know I'd seen the face and seen him in a lot of things. He's been around for a pretty long time in the industry.
You know, I'm gonna have to go worst actors. Whatever plant that was trying to mask being edible. I did not believe.
I know. That plant just was terrible. And it was letting itself get eaten alive. Did you notice that?
For sure.
Yeah, the guy that played Katoa's father, that didn't do anything for me.
No. Yeah. And they took... The thing is with Basha, the way Basha was behaving, that's Prax in the book at Basha's house. When Basha tells him, we're leaving. Because that's who that is. That's who the one who Basha gets in there, Prax gets in the fight with. It's just they've moved that fight and rearranged the motivations and who's got which position, who's taking what side in the fight, and then threw them together in a whole new situation. It's just like, right? They're adapting stuff. It almost feels like, hey, look, we've got this thing from the book, but it doesn't really work.
Well, it was just a vehicle to be able to find out about Romo.
Right.
So
and then Prax breaks his promise because they didn't even mention Basha's kid, Katoa. And he promised Basha that they were going to ask Roma about Katoa as well, and they just totally left Katoa out of it. So,
yeah, what is Basha doing? Not insisting on going with them too. What's that all about? I mean, your son is missing. You go with these people who are going to be helping you to find him. No, maybe just lays back down.
I think they told him to stay there. I think they told him to stay there.
Amos probably did tell him to stay here. Stay there.
Can't remember what it was.
I figure he's sick or
some reason to stay there.
All right. Any other actors anybody want to bring up? Scenes. Oh no, we're on scenes. No, I got this wrong.
No, we weren't actors. We weren't actors.
Yeah, we were on actors. My bad. So,
no one's got anything else. We'll have our final question of the night.
Go for it.
of the themes in this episode, which ones got your attention? What do you think about those themes, and are they relevant to the books or any events happening in real life?
I'll always let you guys go first on this one.
Well, I hate to be stupid, but you know, other than some aspects of the title of the show, Cascade, I didn't really pick up on any real themes.
Okay.
You know, repetitive.
It happens.
Yeah, I didn't pick up on any kind of repetitive issues throughout that sort of define it as is. Other than Cascade, where you do see, as the show goes on, there's more and more of the station's deterioration, as it were. That's kind of like the only thing I saw there.
Well, it's not even just, you know, these artificial systems like space stations and planetary stations, like domes like that, like Ganymede Station, it's breaking down with the Cascade. But we see broken down systems elsewhere in the in the system. We've seen it with, you know, in the belt. It's a broken system, you know, with the underclass being ruled over by, you know, basically alien invaders, you know, coming from another place, you know, from elsewhere in the solar system. You know, Earth, I mean, we see how broken the Earth system is. This episode, as she walks through that enclave with homeless people. I mean, and like we discussed earlier, I don't think you could call a police state anything but broken. And that's what Mars essentially is, you know? So it's like we're seeing broken systems everywhere, and they break down even more throughout the series until things change. Spoilers, things change. Oh my God, imagine that.
Wow.
But they do in this book series. They really, really do.
But
But yeah,
what is
I
it?
definitely think,
Amos had said to Prax about that, like they don't even know the system is fudged before it's actually dead. It's dead
yeah,
before it's actually technically dead.
yeah, it's dead, just doesn't know it.
Right.
And that's basically what Earth is at this point.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's getting there.
definitely. You know, at least with the way humanity is being handled on Earth, you know, it does raise questions of, you know, what do we do in the future when, see, there's not enough jobs to go around, whether by sheer population reasons or the fact of so much automation with, you know, and automation is going to be taking over everything, you know, office management jobs go into automation, you know, the white collar workers are going to be out of jobs suddenly, you know, and it's not it. And people say they don't see that there's no robots and AI in the Expanse, and I counter it's everywhere. I mean, you see drones everywhere. We do see a robot, a mining robot or something, you know, in season 4, I think, or season 5. Well, season 5. We do see robots. Every missile's a robot, you know, and the ships all have AI. I mean, how else do you think he can talk to it and have it? He tells it, show me this, and it shows, it interprets what he means better than anything we've got today. And what we have you doing it today is really, really weak AI. But, you know, everything's automated. There's, you know, it's obvious, you know, good reason why there's not enough jobs on Earth to go around. And how do you handle a society that way? You know, you've got 30-40 billion people you're trying to sustain.
Well, I thought the explanation in the book was rather interesting in that during the 21st century, population was dropping worldwide.
Yeah.
And right now they're expecting it to. But because of automation and the fact that women didn't necessarily have to work anymore and so on and so forth, they kept themselves occupied by having children. And that's what sparked this huge ballooning of population on the Earth. I mean, at the rate we're going right now, if you look at the population growth curve, we're in kind of a lull, but it's almost been going straight up recently. If you look, go back 2,000 years and plot the world population.
I was actually surprised today I saw a headline. I didn't bother reading the article because I was busy. It's referring to that somebody's concerned that there's decreasing birth rates, and I'm like, that's a concern. I almost think that's a relief. You know, when you look at what we're going through just to handle the 8 billion people we have on this planet, we're not even really taking care of 8 billion people.
So, on that front, economists want, growth, constant growth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, for population wise, you kind of want at least a replacement value, because you want to have generations take care of the prior generations, or you end up where China's going to have this issue right now where their next generation is going to be significantly smaller than their older generation.
Yeah, there won't be enough people to support.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, what, a 20% dip of young to new old?
Yeah, well, Japan right now is going through that issue, and their young population, I believe their rate is like 1.2 children per woman. 2.1 is straight replacement. So at 1.2, you're having the number of children that you need just to maintain the status quo, and therefore there's going to be so many fewer in 20 years from now. For example, all these babies will be working, all the parents will be retiring, and you're not going to have enough young workers.
Speaking of that, Japan also has the issue that people are not retiring. You have like 80-year-olds who are still in the top positions, and say the last 30 years, people have not been able to move.
No advance.
Period.
Yeah.
So there is no incentive to create replacement.
I know first chance I had to retire, I did.
Themes I came up with this, pretty much the same one I was from season 1 was resource scarcity that affects everybody in the system, and we saw that heavily in Earth. And that resource scarcity is because of their population, and other resources include things like jobs and even education, because why educate people who have no job for the education?
Yeah.
And we clearly saw that. Let's see.
And that's shown in the books too, when Bobby steps out for air, as it were, and she goes to that cafe, I believe it was, and the waitress tells her that she has to work for a year just to prove that she's willing to be a worker, so that she can get into college in the first place, because they don't want to educate anybody who's going to be so lazy that they're not going to do anything after they graduate. I thought that was a very interesting little nugget in the books, which obviously doesn't make it into the show.
No, sadly. I think that's an interesting way to go about it too.
Real world politics wise, last election cycle topic that came up was a thing called UBI, Universal Basic Income, which is pretty much what they're talking about.
Basic,
right?
The dole.
And I think I was sort of mentioned it even last episode, like they get basic support, and as we saw with Bobby, like that basic support is nothing.
Supposedly, I think the people we're seeing, the homeless people we're seeing, are kind of the people who are off the books. They don't talk about that in the show, but it is referred to. I don't remember which. I do remember which book, and I'm not going to say because that would be a spoiler. But we spent some time on Earth with some Earth-based characters, and find out that there are a lot of people who aren't on the books, that the government doesn't officially know about, so can't receive basic. And I think that's a lot of what we see down in that enclave with Bobby, is people who are just for one reason or another are off the books or born off the books or got themselves thrown off the books for whatever. But so
well, perhaps they could be entrepreneurial enough that they no longer qualify to be on the dole. They might be in that kind of weird zone where you're not poor enough.
Yeah. Or they could be the offspring that Amos mentioned. Other
but
themes.
It's just another example of a system breaking down.
Other themes kind of talk about like what Naomi mentioned about, those little evils that you keep doing, and it gets easier as you go. And like you saw that clearly with trying to remember what his name was here. Aaron Wright.
Yeah.
He wanted to work with Pierce on this, on the protomolecule, and just kept allowing these smaller evils to keep building up until it was just like, oh yeah, it's going to destroy a whole planet or asteroid.
Yeah. Yeah, he got pulled into something he wasn't quite expecting it to be, I think. At least that's the impression at this episode.
Yeah.
Any others, Max? Mitch?
I'm good. Glenn?
First of all, I brought this up and I was just referring to it. Guilt. People who are feeling guilt. Side of Aaron Wright, with his confession, but even more than that, with Prax talking to Amos, how part of him actually felt relief when he thought May was gone, was that she was dead, and he knows that that's wrong, but he's got guilt over it. And then notice he gets up immediately, goes and does something he actually knows how to do, working with the plants, at least supposedly working with the plants. So he goes and tries to do something to make himself feel better, because obviously he likes plants, so mentioned the systems breaking down or systems already being broken. So I guess the other one I've got is kindness and trying to help others. The Roci crew helping Prax. Now in the book, it's more altruistic than it is on the show. On the show, it's all about an excuse to get them around. Somebody to lead them around on Ganymede Station trying to hunt down the protomolecule. But they are still they didn't have to help Prax. They didn't even really have to take him with them, really. So you got Nico helping Bobby. Yeah, he got some Osteo X out of it, but that was just for the directions of, to where to go. He gave her a whole lesson, or two there, and he was helpful, let's see.
And one other thing that he did, he also introduced the idea of having to wait to be able to get into university.
Yeah.
Which becomes a big issue further down the line, a big political issue. So I thought that was interesting to introduce that concept now.
Yeah, they're foreshadowing stuff from the next season. And then you get people helping other people in general on Ganymede. At least there are people helping people. It's more pronounced in the books. The books are not. The show's darker than the books. I'll say that. And I think the tone of the show is much darker. Doesn't have nearly as much of the lighter moments and the comedic beats that the book has. I don't know. There are things the book does better, and that's one of them. Is showing the kindness and helping others, but it's there if you look for it in this episode. Looking at my notes here. Oh, and yeah, bullies need to be crushed and punished. I think we can all agree with that. That whole little speech, that was a great speech Amos gave right there. Wes Chatham gets some really good speeches. sometimes. Some really good dialogue.
And it's funny because it's a character that you would think would be least likely to speechify, as it were.
Yeah. Well, that's how I felt when I went and read The Witcher. I didn't expect Geralt of Rivia to spend more time in the book sitting there talking than fighting monsters. But there was more talking than fighting monsters. And I'm like, this is not what I expected, you know? So I love it when they trip you up like that.
Mhm.
You know, they do that. Anybody have anything else they want to bring up?
Yeah, I don't think I have anything else. I'm looking at my notes. And
I do love the irony that the MCRN itself gave Bobby the means to break out of her room, you know, her using
Yeah.
her purple heart. And she must have gotten cold at some point there, because when she started, she took her jacket off and she had that sleeveless shirt on. And then, you know, then she starts working on the window. Then we cut away to all these other scenes. Then we come back to her working on the window. She's got that long sleeve shirt on, working on the window still with all the broken parts. I'm like, did she
I
get cold
never
and put a shirt?
noticed.
Yeah,
I never noticed that. Oh, I'm gonna have to go back
I
again.
noticed that today. I'm like, did she get cold and have to put another layer on? I mean,
Wow.
I understand. You know, I do that all the time. Putting on a second layer. I mean, I'm wearing 2 layers here, 2 different tie dyes. But yeah, I caught that and I was like, oh, I hadn't noticed that until today.
Wow.
I think that's it. Oh, there's one change that I'm really happy we didn't have to deal with when Holden discovers that the protomolecule is loose on Ganymede. He assumes Fred did it in the books. Fred did this. I'm like, no, don't go down that road. And thankfully, the show did not go down that road.
Yeah.
You know, which is kind of surprising with the hostility that they left each other with the last time we saw Fred. It was pretty hostile.
Yeah, I actually like the way that they have modified some of the storylines, you know, like who knows about the monster, who knows about the protomolecule sample, these things. I think switching it from what they did in the book to the series adds the tension that's really needed.
Yeah, when you're doing it, when you're having to break it down and have tension every 45 minutes, you know, have different tension every 45 minutes, you have to add tension because what's in the books is spread out too much, and so it just won't work as a one-to-one.
Yeah. It's like waiting for college in Earth.
What's that?
The wait times in the show, the book.
The
patience you have between things happening.
Yeah. But anything else, you guys? I had a great time chatting with you, Mitch.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes, I think I might try to sneak you on for Wheel of Time when that comes up. I don't know who else is going to end up being guests for that, but that will be some point later this year. So we'll see if I can fit you in.
Yeah, I've only read the Wheel of Time 10 times, at least 10 times more than I've read the Expanse. So,
well, you need to bone up some more on the Wheel of Time, son.
Well, I'm actually going through another reread of the Expanse. I'm on oh God, which book am I on? Oh, book 6.
Book 6.
Yeah. So I'm up there, and so I'll be finishing up the series shortly. And I've been told I need to get into the Sanderson books. So I bought the Mistborn. No, not Mistborn. What's it called? It's a 3-book series. It's the beginning of one of his series.
Probably Mistborn.
Okay, Mistborn. For some
Mistborn's
reason,
a
I
great
thought
place to start.
Yeah, I thought Mistborn was some other author for a moment.
No.
But I have the books. I just haven't cracked them yet, so I'm going to do that after I'm finished with the
Final
second
Empire.
The original title was Mistborn: Final Empire, or The Final Empire. But in recent publication versions of it, it's just Mistborn. Is all it says now.
Oh,
If
okay.
you get a new book, if you get a new copy. I'm in the middle of Tahanu by Ursula K. Le Guin. Dragonlance Legends, book 1 I just finished. I'm going to be rereading that again over the next week because I sit down and discuss it with a couple of friends next week. That's a reread from my youth, you know.
Dragonlance is an old series, yeah.
Yeah,
I read it and I can barely remember it, but
yep, this is rereading from youth, you know, first half of our life. I'll send you the list to see what's on there that you'd be interested maybe in rereading and coming on to discuss. Something that you read the first half of your life. But what else am I reading? I've also I started Raymond E. Feist's Magician last night because I was too sleepy to read or listen to something and actually think about it, which is what I'm doing with Tahanu and the Dragonlance stuff right now. So I decided to just listen to something else that I'm quite comfortable with. And it's not like I haven't read Magician 3 or 4 times already and have it scheduled for a couple of months from now on my other channel. So I might as well start it now just to get a reread in, see how I remember it. Well, thank you guys. Thank you, Mitch, for coming on. It's been great talking with you. Thank you, Max, for running things for me tonight. And this time I didn't call you Bill. I'm going to call him Max one of these days. Thank you guys at home for watching. Please come back next week as we discuss episode 11 titled
Here There Be Dragons.
Here There Be Dragons. See you next week. Don't forget to be awesome.